Although the culture they now know arrived in Australia 68,000 years ago. And this type of a win-win-win, this type of a gift economy has existed right up largely until the modern era. It was 1829 that the first Europeans arrived in Western Australia, so that it was a complete win-win-win culture for 68,000 years. Nowhere else in the world has that been found. What they have discovered as a result of genetic testing now is that for that 68,000 years, there was no war, there was no slavery, there was no famine, there was no plague. They built a completely sustainable culture that managed to overcome huge differences in climate change, the rise and fall of sea levels by 130 metres. So there's a lot of lessons there for us, and what the lessons show is that for a win-win-win culture, you need to have a powerful egalitarianism in which egotism is either ridiculed or ostracised. You need to have a playful attitude to play in meeting problems. And you need to be it's really important that child rearing is very important, because we learn a win-lose game in childhood, and we think that's the way the world is. We think that there is not enough. We think that more is better, and we think that we have no choice. And it's this that underpins our monetary system, the laws of scarcity, that leads to the win-lose game that we play now. And unfortunately, given the fact that we've got an unsustainable culture, a win-lose game is producing a lose-lose game for everybody. Now, how do you build altruistic reciprocity? It's interesting that there are some characteristics about us as human beings that have enabled us to do this, because we are a cooperative animal. We are a collaborative animal. Even though the examples of collaboration given Donald Trump, and I hesitate to talk about the current government in Brazil, or in Australia for that matter, is built around winning and losing. What you find is that to build a true collaborative, collective intelligence, we need to be long-lived, so that there are many opportunities for altruism throughout our lives. We also need to be living in face-to-face communities if possible, because it's the dispersal of populations and the short-lived nature of communities that mean that reciprocal altruism is difficult. We need to have mutual dependence on each other that is heightened and symmetrical. The other interesting thing too is the importance of grandmothers. In fact, it's been shown just recently that it was the evolution of grandmothers that turned us from being a smart monkey into being human beings, because grandmothers can repay the parental care that they received as children by passing their collective wisdom on to the next generation. Because in this way, altruistic reciprocity supports the survival of the community as a whole itself. So, how do we build such a gift economy? First of all, it has to be built around long-term exchange, not immediate exchange. It has to be built around the idea that the world is not comprised of objects. It's comprised of temporary nodes in a process of flow. What this means is that if we build a culture that is not built around the concept of having, but about the concept of being, the gift becomes the way of building trust. It becomes the way of building community. It's the way of building the support that we need in raising the next generation. And as they say, it takes a whole village to raise one child. The other thing too is that it's built around the idea of dependability, this gift economy. It's not built around people being egotistically independent. It's built around the idea of the quality of life, not the quantity of things. And it's not therefore built around the idea of objects, but the idea of us humans as being subjects together. So, how do you build such a gift economy? There's a lot of research being done at the moment, and it's found, for instance, that it's basically about building trust. That this building trust is based on honesty. It's based on where the truster relates and depends upon and relies on the person who is the trustee. It's about the nature of well-being, not the nature of having so much. It's interesting that the trust is shown to be built around a neurotransmitter that we have in our brain that humans have evolved a lot of. It's a neurotransmitter oxytocin that is found in situations of unconditional love. So building trust is about 10 or 12 different factors that lead to the building of this. First of all, we need to deeply listen, be capable of listening to the others. The second one is the suspension of certainty. It's not about what we know, it's about what we don't know that we don't know. It's about looking at seeing whole systems and seeking diversity. In seeking this diversity, what we need is we need to respect the discernment of other people, the ability of other people to see things that we cannot see. And in this relation, we need to be able to welcome what emerges from the collectivity. In the term of trust building, it's a process of inner awareness. And the most important thing, and this is very important in dragon dreaming, is the celebration. True celebration occurs when we are able to acknowledge and recognize what the other is contributing. Now, one of the things about the building of this gift economy is that we need to be capable of recognizing that, in honesty, that egotism creates the concept of the cheater, the person who'll try to get something for nothing. And the true gift economy is an economy where people are able to detect when people are cheating, to detect the psychopaths who wish to exploit and use us. Aboriginal cultures, what they did was, if there were, and there's always been people who've been trying to cheat, to be able to recognise that, what they do is if a person is trying to cheat, they ridicule them. And if they persist in trying to cheat, they're ostracised from the community. And we need to be able to do that if we're to build a world that works for everybody. There's something interesting that I'd like to share in terms of the gift economy. It's something that is found in the most egalitarian cultures on the planet. The most equal cultures on the planet at the moment are the Scandinavian cultures, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. And they have something that they call the law of Jante, or Yanti. There's 10 steps to the law of Yanti that I'd like to share with listeners. First of all, you're not to think that you're anything special. We are all equal in our humanity. Everybody. The second thing, you are not to think that you are as good as us. Now, who is the us? It is the collective community. The individuals are not superior to the collective community. You're not as good as us. And you're not to think that you're smarter than us. Communities are smarter than the individuals that make up their members. And you are not to convince yourself that you're better than us. In fact, we will survive by being together. as the collective or the collaborative technique that you're talking about. You're not to think that you know more than us. The community knows more than its individual members. And if you're going to build a world that works, you need to be able to access that collective wisdom. You're not to think that you're more important than us. It's the community that has the ultimate importance, because we could not survive without it. Every project needs to be a community project, because otherwise it just doesn't work. You're not to laugh at us. People ridicule communities. And by ridiculing a community, you're weakening yourself and you're weakening the others that are necessary. The last one is that education means drawing out from others. So if it's drawing out from others, you can teach us nothing. You can't teach us anything. It has to come from the collective intelligence of the group. Dragon dreaming then is built around this idea of what we call the great turning. How do we shift our culture to be a win-win-win? How do we shift our culture so that it becomes a sustainable culture for us all? Now, if through Collabor America and if through the sorts of things that you're doing, if it takes a week to get 2 people to build this new kind of culture, and at the end of the second week, each person just works with 1 person a week. If we can do that for 32 weeks, we will have reached every single man, woman, and child alive on the earth. We could build this culture in 9 months. And that is the dream and the promise and the hope, Dragon dreaming. I'd like to pause there and ask if there are any questions from the audience that they'd like to learn more about this.
Sure, John. Thank you. Take a round of applause. Who has a question? You have to speak here and here.
Okay.
Can you listen to us, John?
Yes, I can.
Good. Very good.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for your speech. And I would like to ask if there's some example going on right now you could share with us. I mean, a place, a city in the world that is able to do this right now.
Yes, there are many, many examples that we can use. One example I'd like to share with you now is the biggest project that has ever been tried on the planet. It was tried on the 15th of September this year. It involved 14 million people from 147 different countries around the world. And on the 15th of September this year, those 14 million people collected over 200 million tons of rubbish in the biggest organised project on the planet, ever. That's one thing that collaboration can build. But there's a lot of examples of this sort of collaboration of the gift economy emerging. For example, organ donors in medicine, they give a free gift of the organs. They're not bought or sold, or they shouldn't be bought or sold, and in most countries they're not. People might have heard of copyleft as distinct from copyright. It's about a process of file sharing or open source software building. This is an example of a gift economy. Wikipedia is a gift. The people who created Wikipedia and the people who create the articles in Wikipedia are not paid for the work. It's a gift to the whole community. And then there are specific events like the Burning Man project in the United States, or the Commons, or loyalty programming that people give gifts of information. These are all examples that are growing. The peer-to-peer file sharing methods. It's not barter, it's not a market, it's a free gift of altruistic reciprocity. Now, what is the biggest gift that you can give to someone else? Marshall Rosenberg, the creator of nonviolent communication, says that the biggest gift you can give to anyone is the gift of that person knowing that their life makes a difference. Now, in Dragon Dreaming, what we do is that we encourage people to undertake projects that meet those three objectives of personal growth, building community, and service to the earth. And then there's a philosophy that assists people in doing that. There's a model that people can follow that is built around a methodology of tools that are available that really build that kind of collaborative and collective intelligence. And finally, we say that Dragon Dreaming is a community of practitioners that support each other in making their dreams come true, that integrates the whole process together. I hope that gives you some examples, real examples, of what we're talking about. The nature of projects, the 9,500 projects that are probably working in 54 countries around the world as we talk, are created by the people themselves, and they're in complete control. So good luck to building the win-win-win. Another question?
Yeah, let's see. Who has another question? Can you listen to us still, John?
Yes?
Good, very good.
Okay. So you mentioned 9 months, and it's beautiful to think of having ideas spread around the entire globe in that period of time. But in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges in that idea? And also, once a message is spread, I mean, it needs to sustain itself, right? So also the challenge of that.
Yeah. One of the things we say in Dragon Dreaming, every project begins as the dream of a single individual. But 90% of projects get stuck in the dreaming stage. And the reason why is if you want to make your dreams come true, the first thing you have to do is to share your dream. It's interesting that Dragon Dreaming draws its inspiration, a great deal of its inspiration, from a Brazilian, Paulo Freire. And he said that if you want to make your dreams come true, your project needs to die. It needs to make its Easter. Because only if your project dies can it be resurrected as the project of a group, as the project of collective and collaborative intelligence. You see, if I'm going to be working on your project, there's a different energy than if I'm working on our project. So the first thing you need to do if you want to make your dream come true is to build a dream team, build a team that supports you in making that dream come true. And people don't do that because they're afraid that if they share their idea, people will take it from them. But a success has many parents. It's the failures that are the orphans. The second stage is that people don't plan to fail, they only fail to plan. So the second stage, you have to take your team and build a plan around your project that makes it happen. But we have a faulty idea of the nature of intelligence. We think intelligence is something that you've got in your head. And that's not true. Intelligence is not a thing, it's a process. It's a process that connects you to the world and the world back to you. But if you think that intelligence is a thing that you've got in your head, then the plans for your project are created by the head of the project. And what happens if that's the case? You've just created two groups of people who can blame each other when things go wrong. Because the head of the organisation will blame the doers for not following the plan, and the people who are left to do the project blame the head of the project for being out of touch with reality. You need to integrate the planning with the doing. Now, unfortunately, it's a truth, but 90% of projects that are in fact planned and done collapse within 4 years. 90% of new business startups, 90% of government initiatives, 90% of non-formal or non-government organisations, 90% of community projects don't last longer than 4 years. They're not sustainable. And the reason why they're not sustainable is they leave out the fourth step. The fourth step to a successful project is what connects the doing of the project back to the dreaming. In Dragon Dreaming, we say that 25% of every project needs to be celebration. If you are not celebrating 25% of the time, you will get burnout. And when you get burnout, you leave your project. And when that happens, the project collapses in your departure. What we need to do is we need to recognize that you're going to leave every project you ever do. The biggest project you're doing right now is called your life, and you'll actually even leave that project too. So if you're going to leave every project you do, you need to prepare for your departure, not later, but now. What happens in most projects is people leave thinking about a succession, leaving the project, only when their motivation goes down and they get burnout. And so what happens is people try to find a replacement for their project to keep it going when their own motivation and enthusiasm for the project is at its lowest. In fact, in Dragon Dreaming, we say it needs to be at its highest. So what you should be doing is looking for your replacement in your project right from the beginning. For example, it's been found with farmers that the farmers who prepare for their final retirement early are the farmers who pass the farm successfully on to their children. It's the ones that leave it till the last moment that the farm collapses. So, dream, plan, do, and celebrate. We believe in Dragon Dreaming. That's the way to do it. Looking at those statistics I gave you, if you start with 1,000 dreams and 90% of them are blocked in the dreaming stage, you finish up with 100 plans. If you look at those plans and 90% of them don't work according to plan, you finish up with 10 projects that are done. And if you look at the statistics about burnout, of those 10 projects that are done, only one of them survives more than 4 years. So you've gone from 1,000 dreams to one in 4 steps. And the danger is that people know that. And so what happens is they give up their dreaming. And Aboriginal people in Australia say a people who lose their dreaming have lost part of their soul. And there's symptoms of soul loss: apathy, fatalism, powerlessness, blaming yourself, blaming other people, and a slow slide into depression. So that's the way, I believe, and we've got lots of experience, that's the way to overcome the difficulties that occur in projects. I hope I've answered your question.
We have last minute, 1 minute, just to try to keep punctuality here, which is not a common culture of Rio. So let's try to, if you can bring us what is next to come about Possibilities Institute. So to share what is next to come to you, we will be very glad.
Yes. Possibilities Institute is a new organisation. It's, in a sense, it's the legacy of Dragon Dreaming. You know, as I say, there's 300 Dragon Dreaming trainers now internationally, and they're doing the work. What we're looking at is taking Dragon Dreaming into the most difficult place on earth. one of the things that we say is that if you can think of any problem in the world, multiply it by 10, and you'll find that problem somewhere in Africa. So at the moment, the Possibilities Institute is busy taking this work into Africa, and for that, unfortunately, people in Africa being so poor, they don't have the kind of money that we need. So we're launching major fundraising philanthropic gift economy for the projects we're planning, or we've already started in Africa. For example, we've got a project working with the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital with volunteers, because it's a hospital that covers the whole of South Africa. We've got a project in Swaziland, which has the difficulty of having the highest rate of HIV/AIDS in the world. And there are people there that just can't get an education because they've got no one to pay their school fees because their parents are dead with AIDS. We've got a project in Namibia which did not have rain in 7 years, and there's a project there to provide them with clean, wholesome drinking water. So Possibilities Institute just doesn't work, not just in Africa, it works around the world. And it takes this technology, not just dragon dreaming, but other technologies as well, to make people's dreams come true, to build successful communities and to work in service to the earth. I hope that helps the people to understand.
That is perfect, John. I would like to thank you very, very, very much for this big gift you gave to Colabora America, to Brazil, Latin America, and the world, because we are live streaming your talk. Thank you very, very, very much.
Just one last thing that people might be...
Sure, please, do say it to us.
There are 33 dragon dreamers in Brazil.
Great.
And there's a lot of marvelous projects there, so keep your eyes and ears open and join them.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very, very much, John. Have a good night of sleep. Sorry to keep you up. Okay? Take care. Bye-bye.
Good.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.